do you believe that a two-state solution is still possible in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And as president, what would you do to encourage Israel to pursue that path?
Thank you. Yes, I do believe it's possible, and I believe it's the only resolution that will work. I think there has to be a negotiated settlement. We have to look for a way to persuade both sides to do more to demonstrate unequivocally their commitment to a two-state solution. And there are steps that both sides can and should make that I would be promoting. So your question is a very important one, and there is no alternative, and I will continue to work for that because I believe it is the best outcome for both Israelis and Palestinians in the region.
Tutti gli sforzi che noi possiamo fare di natura economica,
all the efforts we can make economically, commercially, but also culturally and ethically are going in the direction of a two-state solution. That is the position that we want to achieve together with our friends and partners, because we are convinced that's the only way to solve a critical situation that has been going on for years.
Una grave situazione che si protrae ormai da molti anni.
Our hand is still extended in peace to our Israeli neighbors through the implementation of international resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative. But the fact that they continue to occupy and colonize and fail to observe the agreement we signed together is the main threat to real peace.
Talk about some of the clear signs that you see that we are, in fact, in the last days preceding the return of Christ.
Oh, boy. Well, you always start, if you're looking at timelines, if you want to find out where you are on God's calendar, you look at Israel. You look at Israel. And the fact that they are two things. First of all, they're alone. The world's against them. Even America, for the first time in its history, has backed away from endorsing the right to exist. Our current administration has taken a step that is, our support of Israel through the years has been spotty. We've betrayed them, we've been clumsy. It's a pretty dismal story when you really look behind the scenes. But at least officially, we were behind them. For the first time, we're even officially cutting loose. And that terrifies me. I said earlier, there's two questions that we always get. One is, where's the United States of Providence? The other question we always get is, why hasn't God judged America? Billy Graham quipped so colorfully several decades ago, if God doesn't judge America, you'll have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. Thomas Jefferson said the same thing in 1781. He said, I tremble for my country when I recall that God is just and that his justice will not sleep forever. I harbor the fear that God's abandonment wrath has already started against America. And I think that, see, for years, when people say, why hasn't God judged America? My response has always been because of Genesis 12, verse 2 and 3. We've always stood for Israel. And I've always felt that our support of Israel was a shield to an overdue judgment. Because you look at America in terms of its moral decay, and you just may go through the list. It's amazing. See, I found a very peculiar statistic the other day. Did you know that all the people who died in wars in the United States since the beginning add up to about 1.3 million and change, so to speak? We murder 1.4 million every year in mothers' wombs. The blood of those kids cry out to God. So you start looking at America, and it's long overdue for judgment. If my premise in the past...
That's been deferred by support of Israel.
With support of Israel, but now with that support being dissolved by our present administration, I tremble. Bill Koenig has a book. He has a premise that there's always a correlation between pushing Israel adversely and the storms and all. He has quite a little list that he does. And Bill's a good friend. I've never quite bought the full impact of his hypothesis, but if he's right, we can expect the biggest storm we've ever seen in view of the current situation. So I don't worry about Israel. I pray for it because the Scripture tells me to, and I know Israel's in God's hands. I tremble for America because I think the one thing that has protected us from an overdue judgment is gone.
The Obama administration promised full disclosure about the agreement with Iran, but some lawmakers are just now learning about secret side deals that could make it even harder to verify if Iran is living up to the deal's obligations. And as Gary Lane reports, that could also make it more difficult for some lawmakers to vote for the plan.
After Defense Secretary Ash Carter tried to change the Israeli Prime Minister's mind about the Iranian nuclear deal, John Kerry lobbied members of Congress on Capitol Hill. The U.S. Secretary of State promised full disclosure of the Iranian nuclear agreement.
We're very much looking forward to answering any and every question that the members of the House have, and then later the members of the Senate.
But despite the administration's pledge of transparency, 2 congressmen revealed they recently learned about 2 secret side deals that were made between the UN International Atomic Energy Agency and Iran. Congressman Mike Pompeo and Senator Tom Cotton announced details in a press release. They said the secret deals will not be shared with other countries, Congress, or the public. They apparently involve IAEA inspection of an Iranian military base where nuclear warhead development is proceeding, and PMDs, possible military dimensions of the Iranian nuclear program. The Cotton-Pompeo disclosure forced National Security Advisor Susan Rice to acknowledge side deals were made, involving some sticking points in the negotiations with Iran. The White House will not make details public, but promises to reveal information about the secret deals in a classified briefing with some members of Congress. Congressman Pompeo, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, says the Obama administration agreed to the secret side agreements, and he says without disclosing them, the president is asking the American people to trust but not verify. The intent of that remark was likely to compare President Obama's negotiating skills with those of Ronald Reagan. In December 1987, at the signing of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces deal with the Soviets, President Reagan reminded Mikhail Gorbachev of an old Russian proverb.
Doverяй, но проверяй. Trust but verify.
На каждой встрече вы это повторяете.
You repeat that at every meeting.
Republicans admired Reagan for standing up to the Soviets and gaining concessions. 28 years later, they're saying secret side deals could make it unlikely to verify that Iran really is complying with this nuclear deal.
Some Israelis agree it is worth paying attention.
This deal poses an enormous threat to our safety and security here in New York. This deal poses an existential threat to the existence of the State of Israel. This deal guarantees an arms race in the Middle East. This deal guarantees more world terror and a less secure world.
If Congress is not able to turn back this madness, if we do not elect a Republican president who will change this deal drastically in the future, Barack Obama is now on trajectory to be remembered as the father of the Iranian atomic bomb and as the one who ultimately nuclearized the entire Middle East.
I'm afraid because they're a violent country that supports violence around the world. They support terrorist organizations like Hezbollah, and they've done a lot of damage already, and they're going to do more if they have the capabilities that this deal gives them. So it's a big danger to all of us.
This is a potential death sentence for the West. 70 years after the Holocaust.
Nairobi is getting a facelift. The government has been sprucing up the capital city, preparing to host business leaders and presidents from around the world. But the buzz on the streets is all about President Obama's visit.
I think this is a guy who really appreciates his roots.
Obama visited the East African nation as a U.S. senator, but never as president. His father was from Kenya, and he still has relatives here.
Because he's our brother, we welcome him.
Polls show Mr. Obama enjoys widespread popularity among Kenyans. But the president's visit is not without controversy. You see, close to 700 Kenyan evangelical pastors have written an open letter asking the president not to talk about the gay agenda.
We do not want him to come and talk on homosexuality in Kenya or push us to accepting that which is against our faith and our culture.
Mark Kariuki is the key architect of that letter. He leads an alliance representing 38,000 churches and 10 million Kenyan Christians. He welcomes the president's visit, but says leave the gay talk in America.
Let him talk about development. Let him talk about cooperation. Let him talk about the long-time relationship Kenya has had with America. But about our beliefs and culture, keep off.
Obama has used previous trips to Africa to urge governments to respect gay rights. Kariuki says the open letter is a warning to the president.
The family is the strength of a nation. If the family is destroyed, then the nation is destroyed. So we don't want to open doors for our nation to be destroyed.
Pro-family activists took to the streets of Nairobi this month, urging the president to avoid the subject when he visits.
Since Obama has a Kenyan descent, I think he should be more familiar with our culture.
Homosexuality is illegal in Kenya and 37 other African countries. In fact, Kenya's penal code says any individual who has carnal knowledge of any person against the order of nature can face 14 years jail time. Bishop Kariuki says he'll fight to keep homosexuality a crime in Kenya.
Because it is an abomination to God.
Top Kenyan politicians are also weighing in. The country's deputy president is quoted saying, God did not create man and woman so that men would marry men and women marry women. Another lawmaker warned, we shall tell him to shut up and go home if he talked about gay rights. After last month's U.S. Supreme Court ruling legalizing gay marriage in America, one politician here said allowing such a thing in her country would open, quote, floodgates of evil, synonymous with the biblical Sodom and Gomorrah. Meanwhile, Bishop Kariuki says the president is destroying America with his support for gay marriage.
I believe that with all my heart. With that agenda, he's ruining America because America has been known as a Christian nation. It has been known as a nation that has sent missionaries out. Now it is a different nation altogether because it's an agenda against God.
Despite requests from African leaders to leave his views on homosexuality at home, President Obama says he plans to make gay rights part of his agenda during his trip to Africa. The president faced criticism and growing calls from LGBT groups to press the issue aggressively while in the region, while a number of Kenyan politicians and religious leaders have warned any overtures on gay rights would not be welcomed in Kenya. Homosexuality is illegal in Kenya and 36 other African countries.
Confrontation in the skies between U.S. fighter jets and nuclear-capable Russian bombers not far from American shores. Now, we had reported that on that day, 2 Russian Tu-95 Bear bombers, this is a picture of one, they flew not far from the California coast. Now, we now understand that that incident was roughly 40 miles off the coast of central California, right about here. Now, on the same day, July 4th, 2 other Russian Bears flew close to the southern tip of Alaska near the Aleutian Islands. In both instances, American fighter jets, F-15s off the coast of California and F-22s off of Alaska, flew up to intercept the Russian bombers, and the Russian planes turned away. We are also learning tonight of a communication from the Russian bomber pilots toward their American counterparts in that one incident near California. A spokesman for the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, he tells CNN one of the Russian pilots said over an emergency aircraft channel, quote, "Good morning, American pilots. We are here to greet you on your 4th of July Independence Day." Now, was that a threat? This NORAD official would not go that far, but he did say that this incident was, quote, potentially destabilizing because this was an unannounced approach and because these Russian bombers are capable of striking the U.S. with nuclear bombs. Now, Carol, this all happened on the same day that Russian President Vladimir Putin called President Obama, personally congratulated him on the 4th of July holiday. Many observers in this incident say that was no coincidence, that that conversation and this confrontation all happened on the same day.
They're young, vicious, and tech-savvy. ISIS is not your parents' al-Qaeda, the FBI director says. And tonight he says he believes the group presents a bigger threat to the American homeland than al-Qaeda. In an exclusive new interview with Wolf, James Comey paints a chilling picture of the growing ISIS threat.
Why is ISIS so powerful?
Well, they have adopted a model that takes advantage of social media in a way to crowdsource terrorism. They have invested
about the last year in pushing a message of poison, primarily through Twitter.
U.S. officials and independent analysts tell us the FBI director is concerned because ISIS is now using certain parts of Twitter and other social media that are not in the open. ISIS operatives are moving to encrypted communications on those social media platforms, experts say, to recruit terrorists, inspire, or even direct attacks.
Below the water, that huge iceberg, up to 80% times bigger than what's above the water, that's the deep web. That's the part of the web that's not indexed.
The attack on a Prophet Muhammad drawing contest in Garland, Texas, was believed to have been carried out after encrypted communications between ISIS and the gunman. Comey says those encryptions are dark to the FBI, nearly impossible to track. And unlike al-Qaeda, which thoroughly vets recruits and brings them to training camps, ISIS simply tells anyone who will listen over social media, kill where you are. And ISIS, Comey and others say, is actively seeking, quote, troubled souls.
ISIS targets people al-Qaeda would never have dealt with in the past, people with troubled backgrounds, people with substance abuse problems. ISIS doesn't care about that one little bit.
The result, Comey says, more ISIS followers and potential attackers inside America.
The FBI's investigations related to this threat all across the country. Right? There are hundreds of investigations. We're trying to understand where somebody is on the spectrum between a consumer of this poison on Twitter to an actor who's about to try and murder innocent people, and evaluate where are they on that spectrum.
Breaking news out of Louisiana. Here's what police are saying. There has been a shooting at a movie theater. It is in the city of Lafayette, Louisiana. Lafayette, Louisiana is about 45 minutes west of the capital of Louisiana, Baton Rouge. The theater, the Grand Theater on Johnson Street now, is on lockdown. Police are tweeting that multiple people have been shot. No official word on fatalities right now. But our affiliate KATC is reporting there are at least 2 people who are dead, including the shooter. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal is heading to the scene, where he is said to hold a press conference when he gets there. Again, there has been a shooting at a movie theater in the city of Lafayette, Louisiana, about 45 minutes west of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Police are tweeting that there are multiple people who have been shot, but there's no official word on the fatalities right now, and at least 2 people they believe are dead. They also said in a briefing that the shooter is deceased. They asked people that they don't come to this theater because it's a very chaotic scene right now. They are interviewing witnesses, and we have been following our affiliate there, KATC, their coverage. They have been interviewing witnesses who were in the theater at the time, and they're saying that there were people who were down. Police officers were running inside of the theater, telling everybody to get down or stay safe.
My immediate thoughts and prayers are with the wounded. So at this time, I ask all Americans to join me and Michelle in keeping all the victims and their families, including Gabby, in our thoughts and prayers. I'm sure that many of you who are parents here had the same reaction that I did when I heard this news. As a country, we have been through this too many times, whether it's an elementary school in Newton or a shopping mall in Oregon. These are men and women who were going to work, doing their job, protecting all of us. We're heartbroken that something like this might have happened again. I've had to make statements like this too many times. If you ask me where has been the one area where I feel that I've been most frustrated and most stymied, it is the fact that the United States of America is the one advanced nation on earth in which we do not have sufficient common sense gun safety laws, even in the face of repeated mass killings. And if you look at the number of Americans killed since 9/11 by terrorism, it's less than 100. If you look at the number that have been killed by gun violence, it's in the tens of thousands. And for us not to be able to resolve that issue has been something that is distressing, but it is not something that I intend to stop working on in the remaining 18 months.
National standards for labeling laws related to genetically modified organisms is set for approval by the House of Representatives. Now, the measure, if passed, would ban not only mandatory labeling of GMOs, but also prevent local governments from banning GMO crops and labeling. Now, essentially, it aims to override laws passed at the state level, preventing states from passing labeling requirement legislation. It would limit the Food and Drug Administration from ever creating a mandatory labeling law, and GMO companies would only have to voluntarily disclose genetically modified organisms, foods, or ingredients in products labeled as natural foods. Detractors call this the mother of all Monsanto Protection Acts. Vermont is just one state which has passed laws to require labeling, and this would create the federal law, so it can cast that aside. But don't forget, celebrity endorsements, which often go hand in hand with political efforts. Neil Young has pledged $100,000 for Vermont's lawsuit to label GMOs as GMOs. He says, quote, "I'm just a rock and roller who believes people should know what they're eating." The House is expected to vote on H.R. 1599 later this month.
We're getting closer and closer to not having any clue about what's in our food anymore, especially now that the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act of 2015 just passed the Agriculture Committee and is now heading to the House floor. Because what the bill does is it blocks states from imposing their own laws that would make it mandatory to label food for GMOs. In other words, on a federal countrywide level, the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act outlaws mandatory GMO labeling. Instead, the bill wants to make GMO labeling a voluntary thing. Let's just leave it up to the food makers to decide whether or not they want to label for GMOs. So in other words, we're getting closer to never knowing when we eat GMO food. Now, when Obama was campaigning, he promised to let folks know when their food had been genetically modified. But Congress is feeling pretty confident that the president will sign this bill into law in the fall. And if he does, it will overturn mandatory GMO labeling laws already passed in Vermont, Connecticut, and Maine. So, there's a hot debate going on right now about this, with opponents calling the bill the Denying Americans the Right to Know, or DARK Act. Others are calling it the Monsanto Protection Act on steroids, since the agri-giant has such a vested interest in the bill. So whenever an issue is being debated so heatedly, it's good for people to access information from all sorts of places, both in support of and against, so that they can be best informed. Which is why it makes it so crazy that Facebook has actually blocked thousands of users from posting information against this bill. Prominent health writer Anthony Gucciardi actually took a screenshot of Facebook blocking him from posting a story from naturalsociety.com called "Congress Could Soon Ban GMO Labeling Under New Bill." Facebook clearly told him that the post was blocked by their security systems, but gave no reason. Now, I'm not going to try to say GMO labeling is good or bad right now. I'm just going to say that Facebook blocking information from one side of the table is obviously bad, especially because Facebook is right now trying to own the news. And about 60% of its users actually get their news from Facebook. And they're encouraging news outlets to publish on Facebook instead of their own sites. So Facebook is clearly making a play to control the news right now. But when they block information about GMO labeling and Monsanto, it's got to make you wonder who exactly is controlling Facebook.
Could Hitler's horrible deeds that he did be ready to be repeated? Could that be? Could it be?
I have had 3 Jewish women in their late 80s, all that were Holocaust survivors. One was 5 years old when she personally met Hitler. He came out of the truck, out of his security vehicle, walked up to her, put his hand on her and said, "What a beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan girl." She was Jewish. She accepted the Lord. And these 3 women said to me on 3 different occasions, now this has happened, Sid, the past 3 years. It's 1933 all over again, and America can't see it. The Nazi Party took over the banking system. They took over all regulations. They regulated what you could eat. They regulated the type of table you had to have in a restaurant. They took over the healthcare system. Germany had great healthcare until Hitler socialized it. And they went through 15 things, and I can't go through all of those, of course, but they went through 15. These are women who survived the Holocaust. They went through 15 things that said it would blow your mind. All 15 are happening right now in the United States.